we can say something good about ourselves that will drive us. How do we describe our personality?
Hello, everybody. This is the Analog Park podcast, episode number 4, with Jerzy Rajkow-Krzywicki here, and it's the first episode with a guest. Today, I will talk with Greg Albrecht, who is an executive strategic advisor, a coach, an investor, and co-founder at Albrecht&Partners. Hello, Greg.
Hi, Jerzy. It's a pleasure to be here. Hello, everyone.
And we're going to talk today about, on one side, about coaching and how you can use coaching to improve your business capabilities and how you run your business. And on the other side, about all the things that are analog and that are not technical related. Greg is someone who has an interesting experience because he was a marketing manager at Asus, the producer of computers, and then was an e-commerce business owner. Am I right?
That's correct, yes. And also a marketing agency owner for a couple of years.
Also, and finally, he has sold everything and co-founded Albrecht&Partners, and he's also a coach and an advisor today. So, please, could you tell me how was this path for you? Was it always something you have planned from the beginning to become a coach and an advisor, or?
No, not at all. Not at all. That's a really good question. I would say that most of the things that happened probably happened accidentally, and then when you look back, as Steve Jobs once said, you can connect the dots looking backwards. And I would say that it was also the case with me. I started accidentally as a sales manager in an IT company and then moved to marketing. And I think the only things that were motivating me back then was just to learn very quickly and work hard. And I think accidentally I just became pretty good at marketing. So after I got a little bit tired of having a boss, I launched my own advertising agency, and along the way I learned more about the business and more about certain aspects of it, which brought me to a place where I got a little bit bored, and I started experimenting with other projects like the e-commerce platform, even a coffee place. So there was a couple of them. And in the end, because of a certain turmoil related to my exit from the agency, I cleared it all and I started anew. And when I was, and I think that the thing that helped me go through this process of turning from an agency owner to a coach and from being a manager to actually supporting managers and founders was also a process of coaching that I went through myself. And I guess that was the moment when I really realized for the very first time what is driving me, why am I doing it, and what is the thing that I really want to do. And this is where I have been for the last 7 years. And I would say the last 7 years were the most satisfying to me, as I really feel that I have been doing what I really want to do.
Can you please tell me what was the moment in which you felt that you needed to find a coach in order to develop yourself and to move forward?
Absolutely. I would say that my general interest in psychology, because I would say that everything is rooted in psychology and the awareness that generally our way of thinking creates the way of doing. So it all started with certain personal challenges that I faced. So actually the first process that I went through was more related to finding a psychotherapist, not a coach. Okay. And so I first went through a psychotherapy, and that was more or less 10 or probably 12 years ago. And I was motivated by certain things that didn't go well for me to really be aware of how these kind of tools of conversation and exploration of your mind, how they can really drive change. So based on this experience, when I got to a place when I have been running a company, but I was really not satisfied back then, and I felt as if I were not part of the right path. I would say it was just the discomfort that I feel, okay, I'm making money, I'm doing something for my clients, but I don't feel that it really drives satisfaction. And I'm trying to do other things all the time. So I ended up being involved in a couple of projects, which of course created higher pressure, more work, but in fact didn't create any satisfaction. And I started searching for a solution, and that's how I ended up meeting the coach that I worked with, and I think it was a really helpful journey. That I think my biggest takeaway from my personal coaching process was to understand how that I'm actually able of creating reality based on my own experience, that I have certain capabilities of really recreating something anew, and that all the things that I have achieved have not they haven't happened by accident, but actually that all was related to certain skills, abilities, and it brought more and more self-confidence that led me to this difficult decision of basically starting everything from scratch.
And what is the difference from your perspective between psychotherapy, because you talk openly about going to therapy, and you don't feel that it is something that is shameful or not suited to be spoken about publicly. So what is the difference between therapy, psychotherapy, and coaching with a coach?
Mm-hmm. I would say the difference is that psychotherapy digs much more in the past, and generally also is generally digging in childhood experiences, and is actually really searching for certain reasons that are very, very deep in our upbringing. So it's a different journey, and I think it's more about finding the understanding of the past, while coaching, business coaching especially, is about finding solutions to current challenges. So it's more about designing the future, not trying to redesign and understand the past. And I would say that's the difference. So, but these two tools, tools used in psychotherapy and coaching in a certain way are very similar. So also as a coach, I think it's important to have a high level of awareness, not to dig in certain areas and not to play a psychotherapist while you're not, certified to do this. And of course, every coach has an experience of a client who made a mistake and thought coaching is psychotherapy, and then you find certain topics you don't want to talk about, or you're not qualified to talk about, and then what you do, you just let your client find help in psychotherapy if he or she wants to, right?
What is the cause that more and more people today need therapy or coaching?
That's an interesting question. I don't know if that there is a certain cause that more people need it. I would say the general awareness of these tools made it more available, and that's why people use it. So it's more or less the same as if we asked, why do more people need airplanes today than they needed in the past? It's because there were no airplanes before, and it was not just a tool you could use. I think our parents, especially if we're talking about less developed countries, so they didn't have the certain understanding and the awareness of these tools, which caused them not to use them. So we were probably somehow hidden in areas that we We were just programmed in a certain way and we didn't explore. And then the other side of it, and then this could be also a factor, is how the reality around us has been changing, and everything that is happening around us. I mean, the speed of life, the number of things that we do, the certain pressure created by the surrounding, Instagram and everything that everybody wants to achieve more. So definitely this leads to certain challenges with self-acceptance and self-awareness. But I believe this feeds mostly the ground for actually even more advanced tools like psychiatry. So it's even more than just exploration or coaching. So, but definitely peer pressure and the fact that we want to improve and we are pressurized to improve. And also we expect a lot from ourselves, I think, more than we can do. These are the main reasons that people realize at a certain moment they're just too tired. They don't understand what caused them to, fight so hard for 20 years. I have many clients who have been super successful for many years, and they realize on a day, okay, I'm 50 now, I'm a CEO of a huge company. What have I done with my life? Like, why am I even doing this? And if you have this kind of realization, like, why have you been working 15 hours a day for the last 20 years? Then you start thinking, okay, how do I redesign my way of working so I can, make the most out of the time that I have left and maybe enjoy it more and do it on my own terms. And I would say that's a beautiful tool that can help people change from and I would say robotic automatic mode.
What are your favorite strategies you then communicate to your clients with such a problem? What is the first step you would consider them making in order to rearrange their lives another way?
The thing that I do mostly is it's a very simple job. I just ask questions. So the work is on the side of my client mostly, and this is not something that I just give them answers. Not because it's for two reasons. One is that I don't know the answers that are right for them because it's their life, not mine, even though I may have some kind of assumptions that maybe certain solutions are similar for many other people. They work for other people, so they could work for them. But this is very risky because we shouldn't generalize if we're talking about individual people. And the second thing is that I believe that the process of introspection and searching for a solution is actually the key to finding the solution. So whenever you have a motivation and a desire and focus on changing yourself, whenever you start using your energy in this direction, there will be a solution found. But the questions I would ask is really very, very simple. Like, why are you doing what you are doing? What brings you joy? What is the thing that you would like to avoid? If you had no limits, what would your perfect day look like? And that sort of questions that create that give the ability to explore the opportunities. And this is for a situation where somebody really says, I have no idea what to do. But often many coaching clients, they have a certain challenge they believe to be true. For example, I don't feel appreciated at work. So usually there are more clear goals for them. And if this goal is more clear, then we just dig into certain examples. So generally, what is a good tactic for coaching and for everybody, so I hope everyone who listens to it can do it for themselves, is to explore certain situations. So if we think like, I feel tired or I feel angry, the question is, what is the specific context we're talking about? Tell me a certain story. Because if you start Generalizing, that's a really big threat. So if you say, I'm a sad person, that's a very bad thing if you say this. If you say, I feel sad, it's maybe better. But if you think, I'm sad when I hear that my dog has died, well, that's a very clear indicator of why you're sad, and then you can do something about it. And if you put it on a too abstract level, then problems become very difficult to solve. When you generalize a problem, it becomes overwhelming because it's very hard to really solve it because it's a general problem.
Yeah.
So try to make it very specific, and that will help you solve it.
And do you think that every time you try to describe yourself by some kind of an adjective, like, for example, I'm a sad person, or I am not able to speak, for example, to large audiences or something like that, is it always a bad thing to try to describe ourselves, or not?
Well, I think it's we need to be aware what it creates for us, because we can say something good about ourselves that will drive us. So if I say I'm a successful person, maybe there is something there is something positive it will bring to me. Mm-hmm. But the point is to be really aware of how do we describe our personality, because by using these general terms, we really work on the very highest level of our personality, which is actually the deepest level, deep inside. So we really identify, like, I'm a man, I'm a woman. On the same level, I can say I'm a sad person, I'm a happy person, or I'm a lucky person and I'm an unlucky person. So these words just have a very, very, very deep influence on all the decisions we make, because we make the decisions based on these fundamentals that we believe in, that what we believe about ourselves. So I would say generally it will not serve probably an average person to say that I'm unlucky. It can give you only one thing. If you say I'm unlucky, it will give you an excuse not to work, because you say, oh, I'm an unlucky person, and that's why you rationalize some of your failures. And sometimes it's a thing people do in order not to redesign the way they work. So then maybe it serves a purpose. Every adjectives or every thought serves a certain purpose, but it's good to be aware whether it really serves you as a driver forward or it serves you as an explanation not to change.
Do you oftentimes struggle with some kind of limits of your clients while coaching them? When they come to you with a problem, saying that they need your help as a coach in order to progress in business or in life, and then you see that some kind of beliefs or some kinds of adjectives they use to describe themselves hold them back, and really they prefer to not make the change, even though they made the first step by coming to you?
I think it's pretty common, but you can pretty quickly address it and then see how they react. So there is a strategy or a tool called koan in coaching, which basically you combine two things that your client says two things which basically contradict one another. So first they say, I want to change, but then they say, I don't know, I don't want to change. And then you say, in this moment, and then you use it as a one sentence. So you show them things that are contradictory, and then it can give them certain opening. So I use this tool pretty often. Change is not very easy. It depends, maybe difficult. It requires effort. And also everything comes at a cost. So whenever you want to change, certain things can be lost, certain things can be gained. So then if there is a thing they say they want to change, but there is something they don't want to lose by changing. So for example, very common thing, I would say like a super typical pattern, CEO from a big company comes to me and says he wants to start a business. And then you have, of course, the magic vision of starting a business, but then you have the reality of paying your debts or whatever, having a regular salary. So that's a very simple thing. And then, and then there is the question, what is more important to you? Do you want to have the stability, or do you want to have the excitement and the opportunity? And you need to balance between opportunity and stability. And it's always about this making decisions between the risk and the security. And I think this drives people into decisions. And even if they don't change, that's good for them because they went through the process and they realize, yeah, I had this magic dream of becoming an entrepreneur, but I'm mentally not ready for it. And actually, I really appreciate my corporate job. I don't want to change. And that's good because in the end, they don't have the doubts. They realize that was just a vision. That was just a dream. That was not their reality. And for that reason, they feel more calm because at least they solved this puzzle.
Yeah, it's a very very good point of view because it's also something that I'm seeing very often that people try to idealize their dreams or their plans, and then without this amount of work you have described, it can be really difficult to weigh whether you really want to do it or not.
Yeah, and sometimes there is a third scenario, so that's also pretty interesting. And I like this when, and it brings me a lot of joy when a client has this kind of aha moment when he or she realizes, wow, maybe it's not one option or another. Maybe there is an option where I can actually. When it's exactly about describing certain situations. If we do not generalize corporate or entrepreneurship, but we think, okay, what do you describe by corporate? How do you define your goals? What can you do less in order to have more time to experiment with your entrepreneurial journey? And suddenly you realize you can have both. The question is, you have to go from generalizing to reality, and then when you make decisions on a more granular level. And then suddenly you can realize that you can basically have both things at once. However, this is rare. I don't want to, mystify that. Well, that's possible to have everything. I don't believe you can have everything. It's always everything comes at a cost. But I think it's really good in this process that you can generally understand what you really mean by what you don't like, what you want to have, and maybe there is a third solution that you haven't heard or you haven't thought of before.
Yeah, this reminds me of the story that Greg McKeown has described in his Essentialism book when he describes an executive at a company who goes to see his coach. To tell him that he feels overwhelmed, but by new things he has to do at his job because the company was bought by another bigger company, and the coach says, "Well, you want to quit your job? That's right." And he says, "Yeah, I want to quit. I don't like what I'm doing right now." And he says to him, "Well, okay, quit, but don't tell anyone." So start doing what you want to be doing. Don't do what you don't want to do, and then it will create a third way because it will not be binary anymore.
Great book, by the way. I really, really like this book.
One of my favorites, all-time favorites. You talk also about meditation, and I wanted to ask you. What trying meditation and doing meditation has given to you personally, and also what has it given to you on a business level?
So meditation in general, I would say, is a tool that I'm not an expert, but I can definitely relate to my experiences. I have been meditating for a couple of years, for a certain time, very often, very regularly. Currently, a little bit less. I find other ways of meditating. But still, I believe it has changed my life for good. So, in general, I think it has caused some long-term changes into my life, which are really, really positive. And I would list the benefit. The main benefit I see is that you create a certain distance from emotions, from challenges, from problems, because it's like a spa for a brain. So basically, you somehow create a pillow or a layer between your thoughts and your reactions, which help you really make better decisions because you do not make decisions impulsively. At least myself, and I can also in many cases, because it's not like a silver bullet for all the problems. So it's not that you suddenly become a Buddha and you're perfect, but definitely. It creates a certain layer of understanding to other people, layer of calmness that you can use while making decisions. And also, I would say it makes your decisions better and your problems smaller. So that's how I would explain the benefits of meditation in my own words.
Is it how you would make an advertisement of meditation to a newbie? Because I have tried meditation several times, but I have had problems to sticking to this practice for longer periods of time, really, because of probably of the way how my mind wanders when trying to meditate.
Yeah, I would say certain people or almost everybody finds it difficult because it's completely the opposite direction of what we are taught to do on daily basis. So, on daily basis, brain is the organ that controls us if we are not aware of that. So we think a job well done is when our brain is working full speed. And also it's pretty irritating for the brain when it loses control because of the of the power of meditation. So brain really doesn't want you to make him obsolete. For me also, meditation was difficult in the beginning, and but it's just about the motivation. A friend of mine told me that when he meditates, he becomes really, really angry, and that also happens to a lot of people. So this can also be a case. So he first started meditating, but he each time he meditated, he got really, really angry, and then he gave it a break. And after a while, he returned to meditation, and currently is his daily practice. So I believe it's just like with everything, the motivation that you have and how strongly you really want to do it.
Can you please tell me what is your take on smartphones and in general on the omnipresence of technology in our daily lives? And do you think it is something positive that should be used by humans, or rather you see it as something to be controlled in a smart way because it can lead to bad places?
It's a very difficult question to really categorize it as a good or bad thing. I think it does a lot of good things. So, for example, imagine COVID and not having internet. I think imagine COVID 30 years ago. That would be crazy, Imagine remote work without technology. So that would be really difficult. So I see there are many, many, many upsides of technology. But then when we look at it from the other direction, we can see the addiction, the distraction, the challenges with finding focus, with external approval by people on Instagram or whatever there is. So I think as every technology, it has to be used wisely. And I would not use technology or I would not use my smartphone if I didn't find it really, really useful in certain situations. But normally, the only reason I use my smartphone is because it's just a useful tool for work. So that's why I use, for example, social media. That's the only reason. Honestly, I can say that, but the only way I consume social media is that I actually create content, but I don't consume myself. And so this is a very pragmatic approach, but I don't know if it's good or bad, but I know it's useful, so I use it. but I really don't like consuming anything from the smartphone. So that's my personal take. And if I were to say the general thought is, I believe maybe now the status of the smartphone in the society can be a little bit too high, and you can see, people using smartphones as a way to calm their children, and also using technology as a tool to calm their mind and to distract themselves and to lose focus. So that's, I see a lot of downsides of it. That's my personal perception of the technology.
Do you think that the technology should be in some ways legally limited? Teenagers, for example, have to wait until they can use smartphones, or have to prove they are mature enough to use Instagram?
I think nobody is mature enough to use Instagram because this is a tool that is built in a way that everybody can get addicted. So I don't know this is the way to solve this problem. I think it's more in the nature of the tool itself. That's one thing, and the question is, why would you even use Instagram if you don't market your services to people? That's the only reason why I use Instagram. And regarding limitations, well, there is obviously a downside, because your children or these kids, they cannot get disconnected from technology, because this can limit their ability to navigate in the world. So I believe that making any general restrictions can have a negative impact because of the ability of them to communicate and interact with other people. So I have a personal story of that type, because as a kid I never watched TV because my parents didn't allow me to, and I was always different from other kids. And I think this is something that maybe it didn't limit my personality in general, but I think it was kind of changing my perception of reality. And watching TV is something you can live without, because it's just about knowing certain characters from certain movies. But living without the access to the internet, without understanding technology today, is really like making you in a certain way disabled to really function in the world. So I never think that a ban is a solution. I believe that education is a solution. So the thing is, who can educate, who can take responsibility for educating people, and who has sufficient funds and sufficient ability to educate, and the interest to educate people. Because obviously there has to be a certain way of educating, but the challenge is that the interface we use today for education is actually the interface we want to educate people not to overuse. So that's a big thing. That's why, for example, I don't read books, or I don't like read books on Kindle. I tried, but it's very difficult for me. I just read physical books like this, because it's always something that I can touch, and it doesn't create any distraction, because you do just one thing at one time, and this is beautiful. So, and also technology is not a perfect solution. We can see it today, right? We try to create a perfect conversation. We want to do it for the listeners, for the viewers, but yet still the technology is, on one side, making it more available, on the other side, make it more difficult. Because if we met in a real life, in a room, it would be a better conversation and a better recording. So still, technology are not only upsides; they're also downsides. So for that reason, I think it's good to look at it from these both directions.
I asked you this question because in some areas of our lives, it is somehow easier sometimes to make a total ban than to try to limit your usage of a tool. Or, as you said, nobody is mature enough to use Instagram, because it's you against an army of very well trained psychologists and engineers that make this tool in such a way that it is really addictive for anyone. So
yeah, I agree with what you said, and I think it's a pretty interesting view. That sometimes it's easier to ban something or to limit ourselves completely than to use willpower to control certain things. For example, I don't know, multiple addictions are an example. So somebody who has a drinking problem would say, "Oh, I will limit drinking," but if you already have a problem, it's the more effective strategy will be to stop drinking for good, not to tell that you will limit, because it's easier to remove than to limit, for sure. But with technology is not the case, because it's something like a person who has some food related disorder would say, "I will not eat anymore." Well, that's not the possibility, and I think it's the same with technology. Today you cannot say, "I will not use technology." I mean, you can if you have a lot of money and you live on a deserted island and you don't care about interacting with other people. Maybe that's possible, but at least in business as a tool without technology is really difficult. However, of course, Cal Newport, the author of Deep Work and also of other books, however, I think this one is the most interesting, would definitely argue that maybe you can live without technology, because he lives most of the time without technology.
He would tell you that you should become a digital minimalist and limit your smartphone usage to 1 hour a day.
Yeah. Exactly, that's what he would say. By the way, I read this book I was a little bit disappointed with the content. I think it's pretty obvious what he says in this digital minimalism. However, the problem is a difficult one to solve. So I would say it's not easy to really solve it for good in a simple way. So I hope everyone at least realizes that there is a problem and it's worth solving. And if we start thinking about technology not only as an enabler or as a neutral thing, but as also a potential risk and a time-consuming animal, we can then start rethinking the way we approach it, right?
And do you have any favorite analog rituals or analog productivity strategies? Because when I look at the world of, for example, productivity advice for the last 5 or 6 years, it's clear that people are answering to those smartphone and technology-related challenges by adopting, notepads, pens.
Yeah. So I really like using a notepad. I also use a notepad. I always use like big pages like this and a pen. So that's something that I use all the time, and it's very hard for me to actually create something without using analog tools for this. So it can include the rituals like morning notes, but also even creative work. When I lead a coaching session, I always make notes like this, and and it's always something that helps me create. So and also another analog device that I mentioned before is a book. Because I really enjoy reading analog books because I feel it's much easier to focus, and also it's just a much more pleasant experience. So really I have a certain technology aversion if we're talking about smartphone, and if there was no communication out there to be made, including podcasts and including just reaching out to people in order to share certain knowledge with them through audio, for example, I would probably not use smartphone at all, really, because the only reason for me to use it is just that I can sometimes reply to a message faster because sometimes it matters, and also because, for example, Instagram, I cannot post on Instagram from a desktop. So I post to Instagram from a smartphone. That's the only reason I use the smartphone, actually.
Okay, last question. Tell me, if you could keep only one analog device, what would it be and why?
One analog device? It would be a piece of paper and a pen. If can be counted as a one? One? A pen, because I can write on almost everything.
Yeah.
No, but it can be a pen, because I can find a piece of paper, or I can write on almost everything, and then I can, create a better way of thinking. It would be definitely easier. So I think a pen would be the choice.
You can write on leaf, for example.
Exactly, on leaf or whatever you find. I mean, it's good to have it, but you can always use a stick and write also on the ground. But the question is, how much of a ground do you have? And yeah, so probably this would be the device I would use, because that's the analog device I use every day. If, of course, not to count analog devices like bed, for example, because bed is also an analog device that I use every day to sleep. But
good point. Thank you very much, Greg, for this nice chat. And please tell me where people can find you online.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So now I'll tell you all about technology. So thank you for the conversation. And you can find me on Instagram at Greg Albrecht. You can find me on my website, gregalbrecht.io. There you have all the other links. But I'm also available on Facebook, gregalbrecht.io, gregalbrecht.io. And also on LinkedIn, you can connect with me. So these are the tools I use: LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. And you can find me through gregalbrecht.io. And then my podcast, Greg Albrecht Podcast, which is obviously in Polish. So if you don't speak Polish, don't look for it. But if you do, you can use any tool like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, whatever you use, and you will find and YouTube, and you can find my podcast there. So feel free to reach out anytime, and I'm there.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jerzy. Thank you for the conversation, and thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.